Hello everyone! In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint 6 different Christmas cards. My gift for you is the outline drawing of these cards. You'll find the link under this video. The list of the materials is also available in the description. So I already drew each postcard. What I'm going to do now is to apply some masking fluid to the parts of my drawing that I want to protect from watercolors. On this painting with a cup, the background is going to be dark, like if it was a table. I use masking fluid to make it look like it's sugar powder on the table, on the cookie and on the pine branch. I made a mix of black and yellow ochre that I will use to paint the fur of the rabbit. You don't want your mix to be too dense, you want it to be quite watery. I will also use burnt sienna for the fur. To paint the eyes, sepia will be great, otherwise you can simply use your black watercolor. Let's start by applying some clean water first. Just try to avoid the zone around the nose, we want to keep it white. Now with my mix of black and yellow ochre, I will start to work on the rabbit's fur. I will add burnt sienna as well, as the rabbit's hair color is quite irregular. Try to use your small brush and apply your watery colors by drops. It will add some texture and make it look more like real fur. I start to paint the mouth with burnt sienna and I use a light and watery Geranium Red to paint the nose. You can use any red watercolor as long as it is quite watery. You don't want a bright color. My first wash wasn't bright enough, so I decided to add a little bit more contrast to my fur using the same watercolors. Now let's paint the rabbit's ear. I apply some clean water first, then a tiny bit of Geranium Red. The ear is slightly turned and this color will help to show the inside of the ear. The rest is done with the same mix of black and yellow ochre as well as with burnt sienna. Now it's time to paint the body. I will apply water to the surface and using the thin brush will start to create fur. I apply colors by little drops. It's better to put less color than too much because you can add color later, but it's harder to remove it. To paint the Christmas hat, I will use a mix of Geranium Red and Alizarin Crimson. You can use any red watercolor really. I use the same mix to paint the bauble. To remove the masking fluid, I use a rubber eraser. Before I was doing it with my finger, but I find this eraser so cool and efficient and also very satisfying. I put some water first and then I apply just a tiny bit of my watery mix of black and yellow ochre. I simply want to show that it's not plain white. I'm going to paint some ornaments on the bauble, and for that I'll use my golden watercolor. I use my thin brush to paint these long hairs with my sepia watercolor. The last thing to paint is the shadow. I put some water and then I use my usual mix of black and ochre to paint the shadow under the rabbit. Just a bit of sepia between its paws. As the bauble is red, the shadow should contain some red as well, so I add a tiny bit of red underneath. That's it for the rabbit. Now let's start the cat. The idea is that the cat is sitting outside surrounded by snowdrifts and looking at the snowflakes. I will glue tiny silver strass after the painting is finished to imitate the snowflakes. Now I'm using some ultramarine blue as well as some purple to imitate the sky. I keep the same colors that I used for the rabbit. I will simply use raw sienna as a basic color that I'll apply first. After that, I'll apply my black and yellow ochre mix to the body and I'll paint the stripes with sepia. I'll use burnt sienna to paint the stripes on the cat's face. Now I'm deepening the colors on the body. I'll paint the snowdrifts with just a tiny bit of watery blue, and I'll paint the shadow under the cat. For the bow tie, I will use the same mix of red I used for the rabbit. I thought that I could add just a tiny bit of silver watercolor to the snowdrifts. The snow is shiny, so why not? Now it's time to paint the squirrel. It's actually the first time I'm painting a squirrel, so I'm a bit scared. Well, I've never painted either a rabbit or a cat, so I'm discovering it at the same time as you. So I'm preparing my watercolors. This time I'll use a lot of burnt sienna, quite a bit of brown and sepia. Once I have my first layer done, I'll dry it with my hairdryer and I'll apply a second layer. I'm going to enhance the colors and try to give the squirrel more volume. To paint the tail, I'll apply my watery burnt sienna to the edges and I'll go darker and darker to the middle of the tail. It will look more natural. I'm going to paint the gift box with Ultramarine Blue and the bow with silver and tiny bit of black. The bauble will be painted with the same mix of reds that I used before for the rabbit's bauble. Now let's add a shadow, following the same method as for the rabbit. Brown shadow under the squirrel, blue one under the gift box, and red one under the bauble. Oops, I wanted to paint the cat, but I forgot to put my masking fluid on its scarf. The scarf is going to be red, so I want to keep it untouched. I apply my masking fluid and while it dries, I'll start my next card. For this cat, I'm preparing burnt sienna, brown and sepia. The idea is similar to the other cat. I'll start to paint its face first with burnt sienna this time. For the body, I'll use burnt sienna as a base and I'll paint the stripes with sepia. Again, I'm going to use the same mix of reds that I used to paint the rabbit's head. It's Geranium Red and Alizarin Crimson. The last two cards will be in a different style. If the first four had animals as subjects, these two won't have a main subject. I'm going to use a washi tape to protect the other cards, and I'll prepare a dark mix of Ultramarine Blue and Indigo to paint dark skies. I let it dry overnight. It's getting very dark to film, so I'll continue tomorrow morning. To paint the heels, I'll start with turquoise, and each heel will be getting darker and darker. I'll add the rest of my ultramarine blue and indigo, making the color darker each time. You can make a textured surface adding drops of water or some salt, for example. I use Viridian to paint the trees. I will start my last card and leave this one with trees for a while. I can't decide if I want the writing to be silver or gold. The cup on this card is filled with coffee with foamed milk on top. To paint foamed milk, I apply some water and then a watery brown, leaving some white spots, like if it was white milk. To paint the biscuit, I start with raw sienna, and after that I'll apply burnt sienna as well as brown in some places to add more interest to the cookie's surface. To paint the candy, I use the same mix of reds that I used before. I mix Sap Green with a little bit of Ultramarine Blue to obtain a darker green for the pine needles. To paint the wooden background, I mix quite a bit of sepia with brown. I apply some water, trying to avoid the biscuit, the pine branch and the spoon, and then I apply my mix of dark brown. After removing my masking fluid, I decided to correct the white spots just a little bit. The white spots represent sugar, so I also decided to use my white pen to add a couple of tiny white spots to represent that sugar. You can also use white watercolor or white gouache to do that if you want. So I finally decided to go with my silver watercolors. I'm happy with the result. I love how my silver is shining on a dark blue sky. So basically, I finished with painting. I could stop here and just cut my cards, but I happen to have nice thick red and green cardboard that would work perfectly to make nice foldable cards. So I decided to tear out each card that I painted. This way they will have a nice uneven edge. If you do this, make sure to hold your ruler very hard. You should put a lot of pressure because watercolor paper is thick. To avoid any mistake, I put a lot of effort to really keep that ruler in place. In case your paper is too thick and you can't tear it easily, you can cut it and use the edge of your scissors or your knife to rub the edge. I do it on a couple of cards where the pencil mark is still visible. I use a spoon to flatten the edges. I'm going to cut 3 red and 3 green rectangles. Each one is 11 by 22 centimeters. I'll fold each one of them and paint some ornaments with my metallic watercolors before gluing my watercolor cards. There could be any ornaments. I think my favorite ones are wavy lines. They look good on the cardboard. But you can make snowflakes, stars, dots, anything actually. They just serve to embellish the cards a little bit. I'm using vinyl glue here. I find that it works well for any kind of paper. Just be careful not to put too much glue, otherwise it will pour from the edges and it may ruin the ornaments. So I put a fair amount of glue and I use my block of cheap watercolor paper where I put my cards. That helps to put pressure on them so they'll glue better and stay flat. You can use a book, for example, just be careful, maybe it's better to put a sheet of paper just to protect the book, so if any glue pours out of the cardboard, it doesn't stick to the pages of your book. And the very last thing to do is to add some decorations. I have silver strass. I bought them ages ago in a beauty shop. These are actually nail decorations. I use a strong glue to make sure they'll glue well. And here are the finished cards. Can't wait to offer them to my friends and family. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. It's a bit long, but yeah, there are 6 different cards which is like 6 different tutorials. I hope it will give you some ideas for your Christmas cards as well. I'd like to know which card is your favorite. Please tell me in the comments below. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel as well to my Instagram. I'll be happy to see you there. Have a nice day, see you soon!